So what does it really mean to be remembered? I mean, does the impact of a life, does it really depend on how long it lasted?
That's a huge question, isn't it?
Yeah. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we explore the core of the material you've shared with us.
And today we're diving into excerpts from John Green's The Fault in Our Stars.
Right. And this is, well, it's often labeled young adult, but honestly, it goes so much deeper. It's got this resonant, often darkly funny way of looking at some really profound stuff.
Definitely. We're going to really unpack its portrayal of living with terminal illness, how these relationships work under such intense pressure.
Yeah, extraordinary pressure.
And these big existential questions these young people face. They tackle them with, well, quite remarkable insight, I think.
It's compelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
How the novel uses these incredibly personal experiences, teenagers with cancer, to shine a light on, universal worries about death and finding meaning.
Exactly. It's like this focused lens that helps us all think about these really essential human questions.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. We meet Hazel Grace Lancaster first. She's 16, super perceptive, maybe a bit cynical, and she's dealing with terminal lung cancer.
And then there's Augustus Waters, Gus. He's 17, charismatic, he's in remission, but he lost his leg to osteosarcoma.
And they meet, somewhat ironically, at a cancer support group for young people.
Right.
And despite, the grim setting, something just clicks between them instantly.
Yeah, that support group itself is fascinating. It's this little microcosm, right? Where sharing this experience of cancer builds some community, but it also kind of highlights how alone each of them is in their own way.
Totally. And Hazel's initial take on the group, calling it the literal heart of Jesus, that just tells you everything about her skepticism, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. For her, it's just this obligation from her mom, not exactly the rebellious teen stuff she jokes about wanting.
Right. And we meet others there too, like Isaac. He's dealing with his eye cancer getting worse.
Yeah.
And a pretty rough breakup.
And Lita, who's been in remission for a while, it shows you there's this whole spectrum of cancer experiences in that one room.
But they all understand its impact, yeah.
And then Gus makes his entrance, big entrance, declaring his big fear is oblivion.
It's so Gus, right?
Yeah.
Bold, almost theatrical.
Completely. And it's such a contrast to Hazel, who's more grounded, maybe resigned even, about, well, the inevitable.
Her idea to just ignore that vastness of human oblivion is quite mature, actually. Maybe a bit fatalistic for a 16-year-old, but...
That really is. She's already grappling with these huge ideas.
And then you have the group's mantra, living our best life today.
Ah, yes. Which feels...
Genuinely ironic, given everything.
That irony is spot on. It really flags the gap between those well-meaning sayings and the, frankly, harsh reality these kids are facing. It's just hard to truly live in the moment when the future feels so uncertain,
Okay, so this is where their connection really sparks. Gus is immediately drawn to Hazel, asks for her full name, Hazel Grace Lancaster.
And their first conversations, they're sharp, witty, surprisingly deep.
That cigarette metaphor Gus uses.
You put the killing thing right between your teeth, but you don't give it the power to do its killing.
Yeah, that tells you so much about him right away. His need for metaphors, for finding meaning.
Definitely. It shows his need for control, doesn't it? In a life where so much feels out of control. And metaphors become his way of dealing with things.
And Hazel gets it immediately. She recognizes his metaphorical resonances. Shows how sharp she is, too.
And then she tells him about her favorite book, An Imperial Affliction, about a girl with cancer.
Which becomes this huge touchstone for them, their shared love of this book.
We also get that glimpse of his slightly terrifying driving.
Yeah. And his house, completely covered in those inspirational plaques.
Oh, the plaques. Home is where the heart is. Without pain, how could we know joy?
It's quite a contrast to the dark humor Hazel and Gus share, isn't it?
It is. It's like his parents are desperately trying to inject hope and normalcy into a situation that just isn't normal.
So they hang out in his basement bedroom, and he asks her for her story. The story beyond cancer.
Which is crucial. He wants to see her, not just the illness.
And Hazel admits she feels unextraordinary, which I think a lot of people can relate to, illness or not.
That feeling of being unremarkable, especially as a teenager, yeah, it's common.
But Gus just completely rejects that idea. He loves that she prefers reading poetry to writing it. He sees her depth.
He validates her way of being, her quiet thoughtfulness. He gets it.
Then comes a book swat. So significant. She gives him An Imperial Affliction.
And he gives her The Price of Dawn, his favorite video game novelization.
In that moment, their hands touch when they exchange them. Muddling together, the book says. It's subtle but powerful. Shows that closeness growing.
It really does. And then the movie date, where she's totally unimpressed by his action movie choice.
Yeah, it just shows how comfortable they are being real with each other, even when their tastes clash.
Trading favorite books like that, it's vulnerable, isn't it? Sharing a piece of your inner world.
Absolutely. And the fact that their tastes are different just adds another layer. They're learning about each other.
So their relationship grows. We see Hazel's 33rd half-birthday. She has plans with her friend, Caitlin.
But you feel this distance between Hazel and her school friends. She calls it no through. Her illness has just changed her life too, fundamentally.
That emotional gap is really common for people with chronic illnesses. Their lives just diverge from their peers.
So she finds comfort alone with her books, like Midnight Dawns and the character Staff Sergeant Max Mayhem.
Yeah, those fictional characters offer empathy, an escape maybe, where her physical limits don't matter.
And her connection to an imperial affliction just keeps deepening. She sees the main character, Anna, as the side effect.
Which is such a stark way to put it. Bleak, but accurate for kids with cancer, maybe?
It feels accurate in the context. It's this insight into their reality. They're sort of byproducts of a biological glitch.
And that lets her connect with Anna on this incredibly deep level, seeing the existential stuff underneath the story.
Then Gus finishes an imperial affliction and completely freaks out about the ending. It just stops.
Right, his texts are frantic. What happens next? It shows how much he needs resolution, how invested he gets in stories.
And this triggers a memory for Hazel, totally different. Her dad throwing her in the river as a kid, Holiday Park.
A memory about trust, maybe, and fear before cancer defined everything. A glimpse of her bond with her dad.
Yeah, a bit of carefree joy that feels so distant now.
And Gus's reaction to the book, it just highlights his romantic side, his dislike of ambiguity, maybe echoes his own fears about the future.
Then Hazel goes over to Gus's, and he and Isaac are playing The Price of Dawn.
Just a normal scene, seemingly. But then Isaac's girlfriend, Monica, breaks up with him because he's going blind.
And Isaac just loses it, smashes his basketball trophies. It's raw.
So much pain. And that's when Gus says that line.
That's the thing about pain. It demands to be felt.
Such a core idea in the book. You can't ignore pain. You can't suppress it. You just have to feel it. Isaac's outburst is just pure, visceral feeling.
So after a week where they don't talk, Hazel's worried. They finally connect on the phone again.
Talking about that frustrating ending of an imperial affliction, and how Hazel's letters to the author, Peter Van Houten, have gone unanswered.
Her letter to him is so moving. You really feel how much this book means to her, how desperate she is for answers. It shows the power stories can have, right?
Absolutely poignant. It's more than just wanting to know the plot. It's this deep emotional need for closure, which life doesn't always give you.
And the unanswered letters just make that feeling worse.
Then Gus tells her about his ex-girlfriend, Caroline Mathers, who died.
His description is pretty blunt. Caroline is no longer suffering from personhood.
Stark, almost clinical, maybe his way of coping, trying to rationalize loss.
And it makes Hazel think, what's it like to date someone who's already lost someone like that? The complexity of it.
Right. It adds another layer to what they're navigating together.
Their late night calls become really important. That's when Gus says,
"Maybe okay will be here always." It's such a simple line, but for them, it's huge. Hopeful, but so fragile.
It's incredibly tender and heartbreaking too, because okay is a big deal for them. A moment of stability.
And wanting that fragile okay to last forever. It speaks volumes about wanting normalcy, a future they know is uncertain.
Then Hazel ends up in the hospital, fluid in her lungs, a harsh reminder of her reality.
And that's when she really clocks the financial strain her medical care puts on her family.
It highlights that illness isn't just physical or emotional. It hits families, practically, financially, hard.
So this realization makes her decide. She wants to use her wish, that grant for sick kids, to meet Peter Van Houten, to finally get answers about his book.
It shows just how deeply an imperial affliction has affected her. Wow. It's not just a book. It's become key to understanding her own life, her own big questions.
And then, the big reveal.
Gus. He already used his wish for the same thing.
Incredible gesture. So selfless. And the genies, the wish-granting organization, make it happen. They're going to Amsterdam. The excitement is huge. This trip becomes this massive symbol of hope, doesn't it? A shared quest for answers.
It really does. It's such a turning point, a massive demonstration of how much they care for each other.
So the Amsterdam trip planning begins. Hazel looks up Caroline Mathers online.
And finds they look kind of similar, which is unsettling.
Yeah, and the airport, Gus is so worried about people staring at Hazel's oxygen tank.
Even in all the excitement, those vulnerabilities are still right there, aren't they?
Constantly. The tank, the looks. It's a reminder of how her illness shapes everything. And her looking up Caroline, maybe just curiosity, maybe trying to understand Gus's past.
They get to Amsterdam, and it's described so beautifully, like stepping into a painting.
And that dinner at Orangey, it feels really special, romantic, champagne.
Despite Gus joking about wearing his funeral suit.
Typical Gus. Dark humor even then. A reminder of their reality, even while celebrating.
And their conversation gets heavy. The afterlife, Caroline again. Gus is surprisingly blunt about her personality, not idealized at all.
She was a bitch, I think he says. It shows maybe a more realistic view of that past relationship than you might expect.
Then comes the meeting. The reason they're there. Peter Van Houten.
Oh, the meeting. What a disaster.
Total disaster. He's rude, drunk, dismissive. The whole atmosphere is just awful. Crushing disappointment.
Hazel tries so hard asking direct questions about the book's characters, what happens to them.
But he just gives these weird, metaphorical non-answers. Completely unhelpful.
It's such a harsh lesson, isn't it? That the creator of something you love might not be the person you imagined. He shatters that image for Hazel.
Her calling him a douche pants felt pretty satisfying, though.
It did, and his assistant Lidwij quits right then and there.
Yeah.
Tells you how bad it was.
But amidst that letdown, they go to the Anne Frank house.
And that becomes this incredibly powerful experience.
Hazel struggles so much with the stairs, physically.
Yeah, mirroring her daily struggle. But then, in Anne's room, that quiet moment they share.
In their kiss. With other visitors watching, it felt like this act of defiance almost, against everything.
A moment of intense connection, vulnerability, right there in that heavy, historic place.
They go back to the hotel, share this intimate moment, really deepening their bond.
A moment of joy, of closeness.
And then Gus tells her
the devastating news. His cancer's back, and it's everywhere. Aggressive.
Just brutal, turns everything upside down instantly. The hope from the trip just vanishes.
Yeah. That's the beginning of the end, really, the start of his decline.
The final days. They're shown with such raw honesty, Gus getting weaker.
And that pre-funeral he arranges so he can hear their eulogies.
It's unbelievably moving. Hazel reads hers, Isaac reads his.
And Gus's own eulogy for himself. It's still got his humor, that self-awareness, but underneath, so much love, especially for Hazel.
It's his way of facing it, isn't it? On his own terms.
Absolutely. Then he dies. Hazel's reaction, calling Isaac just the sheer feeling of loss. It's heartbreakingly real.
At the actual funeral, Peter Van Houten shows up. Unexpectedly.
And gives Hazel that cryptic Latin phrase, omnis cellula e cellula.
All cells from cells. Weird, right?
Yeah, initially. Maybe hints at life cycles. Or maybe it's Van Houten's own messed up way of processing things.
Hazel is furious at the minister's cliches about Gus. Feels so empty compared to the real person.
That gap between generic grief platitudes and the actual messy feeling of losing someone.
Then she confronts Van Houten outside.
And learns the truth about him. His own daughter died young. From cancer, it seems.
It doesn't excuse his behavior in Amsterdam, not really. But it humanizes him. Provides context for his bitterness.
Creates this strange, sad parallel between him and Hazel, both dealing with this immense loss.
In the aftermath, Hazel goes back to Gus's empty room, trying to hold on to his memory.
And Gus's dad finds that blank notebook, the moleskin, a hint of something unfinished.
Hazel goes back to the support group, and this time she's just brutally honest about her grief.
Finding connection there, maybe, in that shared space, even in sorrow.
And her parents are just steady. Her mom decides to go back to school, get her master's in social work, showing their resilience, too.
They all find ways to cope, to support each other.
Hazel emails Lidwij about the notebook, still wanting a sequel, in a way, to Gus's story.
Yeah, wanting their story to somehow continue, to beat the ending. It shows how much he meant, how stories help us hold on.
She thinks about the future they won't have, the irreplaceable loss.
Then there's a picnic, back in Holiday Park. She reflects on life, death, cycles.
Remembers seeing her friend Caitlin unconscious in the ICU once, another reminder of her own mortality.
And then finally, Lidwij sends her the pages from Gus's notebook, delivered via Van Houten.
Gus's last thoughts. About love, about loss, about wanting to leave a mark.
It brings a kind of closure. His final words, his feelings for her, his desire to matter even with limited time, that resonates with the whole book's theme, finding meaning, making an impact.
So looking back at this deep dive, What are the big takeaways from The Fault in Our Stars?
Well, it tackles finding love and meaning right in the face of death, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it shows grief. Honestly, it's complex, it's messy.
And the power of human connection, how vital that is, especially when things are tough.
What's amazing is how it handles these heavy themes with humor, with lightness sometimes. Makes it all so relatable.
Yeah, it reminds you that even when things are incredibly hard, there can still be joy, connection, real understanding.
So for you listening, what parts of this really hit home? It's worth thinking about your own views on these huge questions: life, death, the stories we tell ourselves.
This whole discussion makes you think, how do we find meaning? How do we connect, knowing that endings are, well, inevitable?
The book seems to suggest it's in those shared moments, right? The love, the stories we share and hold on to, that's where we find purpose.
Exactly.
Maybe the real measure of a life isn't about how long it is, but how deeply it touches other lives. So what kind of story are you writing with yours? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.